We often find that self is at the core of our depression. They curate their behaviour according to the people that are watching them. We all know the quote, misery loves company, and so I think we just need to be very aware and very careful about unhelpful or unnecessary group chats.
He said, take your medication, it is a provision. Also, he said, you've got to rely on the spirit. He pointed to a tree outside and he said, the spirit is more real than that tree out there. I even write down things I've already done, give them some jerk ticks. It's actually quite good to leave your list around the kitchen afterwards so that others can see how much you've done in the day. And that's a good tip. Adopt a simple motto of don't put it down, put it away. But ever since they were little, they tidied their room and got it all neat. And I'd say, keep it that way. And we still say it to this day. It's become a sort of family saying. My father used to say, keep it like it. We have to bow to it and submit to it.
I know one of my auntie's favourite little tips about life is that take housewives, for example. They've all got different things, different ways of doing things. And if you were just to pick up one great tip for housework or one fantastic recipe from every housewife that you spoke to, imagine what a fantastic cook and a fantastic housewife you'd become.
So never being idle, just filling out your day, just keeping so busy, there's just not time to waste time. Yeah, that's good, just pack it out.
Those aren't quotes from a dusty 1950s homemaker manual. Those are the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church sisters in 2025 at a seminar that was marked as empowerment and support. But when you actually sit with what they're saying and the tone it's set in, a very different picture starts to come through. It doesn't feel like women being lifted up. It feels like women being managed, monitored, slowly squeezed. The message underneath is painfully familiar. You're never quite enough. Your house is never quite clean enough. Your grief is never quite humble enough. Your thoughts are never quite loyal enough.
Welcome to the Get a Life podcast. Explore survivor stories. Uncover the hidden truths. Join our ex-cult conversations. You matter, and so does your story.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the Get a Life podcast, Ex-Cult Conversations. I'm Cheryl Hope, and with me today are Richard Marsh, Cassie Davies, and Andrea Becker. We're all former members of the Exclusive Brethren, now rebranded as the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church. Today we are unpacking the Strive 26 Sisters Seminar. This big, polished, pastel-colored production where motherhood becomes a KPI, housework becomes a spiritual test, and even grief is expected to tidy itself up and serve the system. It's a 5-part seminar with even an ER doctor from the States as the keynote speaker. Why an ER doctor, you ask? Well, we all said the same thing. But when you listen to the demands of these poor sisters, you will understand that an ER doctor is the advice they need to keep upright. Their lives have been curated into the same hustle and bustle as what you would witness in an ER. On paper, it looks like a wellness and motivation event. In practice, once you listen closely, it starts to sound more like a manual for keeping women permanently exhausted and permanently grateful. If you just saw the schedule, you'd think motivation, budgeting, mental health, family life, learning and growth, pretty standard women's conference fare. But this isn't just how do I juggle kids and work and life. Inside the PBCC, it's all plugged into a very specific system. What they are really teaching is how to arrange your entire day around productivity, self-surveillance, and a constant service to the ecosystem. UBT, OSG, Orbit, RRT, Campus & Co., the whole machine. They're also quietly teaching you who it's safe to talk to and who it isn't. How to turn stress and depression into a personal failing instead of a sign that maybe the environment is the problem. And they do it in the sweetest way possible. Lots of smiles, lots of soft voices, lots of just a little tip I found helpful. It sounds harmless, even cozy. But by the end, you realize every area of a woman's life has been turned into a project to manage, rate, compare, and report on. We're not going to go minute by minute through every panel because we'd be here for 6 hours. Instead, we'll pull out the key themes and show how they all weave together. Because the contradictions in this seminar are not random. They're the logic of a high control system showing through the cracks.
The panel one is motivation, aka you must never stop. The first panel is framed as motivation and good habits. It looks harmless enough. A group of sisters sharing ways to stay on top of life. Never being idle, filling out your day so there's no time to waste, structuring every moment, always staying hungry for achievement. There's nothing wrong with lists or planners on their own. Most of us live by them. The issue is the way that these women are taught to interpret it. If you're overwhelmed, the answer is never, maybe we're asking too much of you. The answer is always, plan harder, try harder, do more. There's almost no space for the idea that you might be tired or traumatized or grieving. Rest barely gets a look in. The whole thing is framed as spiritual. Achievement, productivity, and never wasting time are all quietly tied to being a good sister. They even wander into the topic of meditation.
This is a very good idea.
Another habit I've heard mentioned a few times is meditation. Could you help me understand what that is?
Well, it's been said to contemplate or meditate on something that you've read. So you read it for a bit and then you put the book down and think about it. It's pretty difficult at times to keep your mind on it rather than wandering off. And it's a very good exercise to meditate. Yeah, I found a couple of good references. Mr. Bruce Hale said it would be good if sisters gave a little time to meditation. I think that would set them free more from their cares. And then Mr. John Hale said, I've no doubt if we meditated more, we'd be habituated to restfulness, which reminded me of Mr. John Hale spoke to a sister many years ago and asked her if she'd found rest.
Outside the PBCC, when we talk about meditation, we mean things like calming the nervous system, breathing, grounding, easing anxiety. In the seminar, the meditation they describe is basically filling your mind with ministry and moral growth quotes while keeping your body constantly busy. So instead of, hey, your nervous system is fried, here's how you can down-regulate, it becomes, here's how to cram more approved content into your already overloaded brain. Right after they talk about meditation, they say, so never being idle, just filling out your day, just keeping so busy, there's just not time to waste. This is one of the signs you're in a cult, keeping busy so you don't have time to really think on your own. When they talk about children, it follows the same pattern. One line about the kids really jumps out.
It's just getting the word into them somehow.
That's how they think about children's inner worlds. Not, who is this child? How are they feeling? What are they curious about? It's simply, how do we get this material into them? If you grew up in it, this probably hits uncomfortably close home.
Yeah, like I remember we would have to get our youngest daughter up for One School Global, and we would have to leave the house at, I don't think, 6:45 in the morning. And we would get her up 15 minutes earlier than she needed, just so that we could read ministry to her or the Bible and or make her read ministry and the Bible before school. I mean, I didn't do it at first, and then we found out quite a lot of the other families did it, and she was like, well, I don't do that before school. And then she's like, well, she noticed she was the odd one out, right? So we were like, okay, yes, this is a good exercise. Let's get you up even earlier. And these kids were up from basically 6, going to bed the next night, that night at 8, 9, up to do the same thing the next day. But just get the word into them. They don't understand, and they don't understand the ministry at that age. I mean,
no, and that's not brainwashing at all.
No, of course not.
No.
And just for the listeners and viewers, Andrea has just recently left the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church. It's just been over 2 years since she left, so she's one of our newer leavers, and so very up to date with what's going on inside there.
What I found really shocking was they're not even talking about the Bible. They're talking about the word of these great men. Like, that's
ministry,
just appalling. Yeah.
Ministry was almost more important than the Bible, quite honestly. Like, we read the Bible at dinner, but in the day it was, oh, you read your ministry.
Doesn't anyone else find it supremely ironic that the women's seminar is all about the great men?
Yeah.
Ugh,
Gag.
gag.
Yeah. Not the great women, right? Like they talk about how they're not misogynistic, right? And then you listen to this audio and it is so misogynistic. Yeah.
It's so contradictory in every sense.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, in a normal church, if they had a women's seminar, they would be talking about the great women in the Bible, like Deborah and Leah and Mary and so on. I mean, there's plenty of them. There's even a whole book of the Bible named after a woman. But none of this is mentioned here.
Yeah.
It's
And
not
even
even
if-
touched on. It's all about the great men, and they're not in the Bible.
Even if the Brethren women decided, oh, we would like to give a seminar on the women in the Bible, they would probably not be allowed to.
No. Wouldn't want them to get above their station, would you?
Yeah.
So we put in a section here which is an analysis of the seminar based on criteria by a psychologist, Robert J. Lifton. To understand why the PBCC Women's Seminar presents deeply concerning personal stories as inspirational, we can use the work of psychiatrist Robert J. Lifton. Lifton is renowned for his study of human behavior under extreme duress, particularly in high-control environments. He analyzed groups ranging from Nazi doctors and Chinese communist thought reform prisoners to religious cult members. His work identified 8 common psychological themes, or criteria for thought reform, that characterize groups seeking to exert total control over their members' minds and lives. When we apply Lifton's framework to the seminar, which elevates obedience and sanctifies historically problematic behavior, the presentation aligns starkly with the psychological mechanisms of a high-control group. The women's personal recollections unintentionally demonstrate how the PBCC systematically employs these methods to maintain generational control and suppress internal criticism. Here is how the seminar and the broader PBCC culture stack up against Lifton's 8 criteria. 1. Milo control. The group strictly controls all communication and information flow. This is evident in the seminar with rules like no recordings, no criticism, and rigid control of discussion topics, ensuring that only the approved narrative is heard. 2. Mystical manipulation. Leaders or the organization claim divine authority and exclusive insight into the universe. The women's language is infused with this, referencing the glory in the saints' faces and believing their purpose mapped by God is only understood through the group. 3. Demand for purity. The world is divided into the pure, the group, and impure, the outside world. Members are subject to constant moral self-scrutiny with a doctrine that demands they be never idle and suppress all negative thoughts or doubts. 4. Cult of confession. Personal thoughts and actions are constantly subject to reporting, both officially and informally. Within the PBCC, this is seen in the rigorous note-taking and the requirement for daily reporting to children, who then report to parents, teachers, to maintain a state of transparency and surveillance. 5. Sacred science. The group's ideology is presented as the ultimate unchallengeable truth. The teachings of past leaders, FER, JSH, BDH, are treated as unquestionable and beyond logical debate. 6. Loading the language. The group uses a highly selective and jargon-rich vocabulary. Common words are infused with specific group-approved meanings, e.g. purpose, moral habits, the great men, and the word, which stops independent critical thought and reduces complex ideas to simple, manipulative catchphrases.
And you have to try to get these out of your vocabulary when you leave the church or the brethren, because people laugh at you. Lord's Day.
Yeah. 7. Doctrine over person. The ideology is always considered more important than individual human experience. Every anecdote, including the story of the kiss, is retold only to reinforce obedience to the leader and the system, regardless of the individual discomfort or ethical concerns involved. 8. Dispensing of existence. The group dictates who has the right to exist or be saved. Within the PBCC, this binary is enforced by labeling those who are compliant as good and those who are idle or critical as fundamentally bad, often leading to shunning or excommunication. By using Lifton's criteria, we can see that the seminar's positive framing of inappropriate behavior is not a flaw in the system, but a deliberate feature of a high-control environment designed to psychologically bind members to the group's authority. Here are some shocking statements from this panel.
It's been said our first waking thought should be about the meeting at night.
This is totalistic thought control.
So never being idle, just filling out your day, just keeping so busy, there's just not time to waste time.
A classic exhaustion tactic used in cults.
And she took me by the arm. She said, "Come over and meet Father." And she said, "Father, this is Estelle's friend." And he said, "Oh, I'll give you a kiss for that." I never have forgotten it and loved him. Yeah, and how old did she? Well, I was 12.
Real-world grooming behavior treated as a sacred memory.
Yeah, I just forget it. It's often been said that just a look from these great men should be enough.
Psychological control through intimidation and emotional dependency.
Yeah, JSH said if you can't say something good, keep your mouth shut.
Silencing of dissent and criticism.
Wow.
Wow, that bit where he said, just one look from these great men should be enough. The story they told around that was horrendous. Like, he basically was telling her what she could and couldn't wear, and she's reflecting on that to the group, saying how amazing it was that one look from one of these men, you knew exactly what they were talking about. And you had to adjust the simplest thing, and that was wearing something around your neck.
Yeah.
Wearing a necklace, and he was telling her she couldn't wear it. Like, yeah. And they're telling that proudly, like it's a good thing. I'm just mind blown.
JSH speaking to me after a meeting at Omington one day when I was in my early 20s, and I used to wear an old antique watch around my neck on a chain, and he came over and said to me, "How are you?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm well, thanks, Uncle John." And he said, "Do you have to wear that round your neck?" He gave me the most beautiful smile, and I've never forgotten it, but I never wore it again. I said, "No, I won't wear it." So I never wore it again. It was just a look that, yeah, it was just his look on his face. I could never wear it again. Yeah, I just forget it. It's often been said that just a look from these great men should be enough. Kaz, you could share something about?
Oh yeah, similar. When I was in year 10, we had Mr. Howes in the family home, and I just remember him just beaming on me, and he said, "Give it your best 2 terms and your best 2 years." And yeah, I'll just never forget the look.
Life changing.
Absolutely.
And I mean, it is intimidation, because one thing that struck me after I left, I never thought about it when I was in there, but I was in the Brethren when James Symington died, and also when John Hales died. And despite all these words the Brethren say about how much they love these great men, no one shed a tear. Like it was announced at meeting. No one was crying, no one was weeping. I mean, when Princess Diana's funeral, everyone was crying. But yeah. No, it's not. They're not really loved. They're feared. And that's the basis of the obedience. It's not obedience because you love them. It's obedience because you're afraid of them. So, Bruce, you won't be missed when you go. That's a comforting thought, isn't it?
No, then there will be real rejoicing.
No, we're praying that he still stays alive for a bit longer.
I'm not praying it either
just
way.
Just a little longer.
Well, and even that the sentence of if you can't say something good, keep your mouth shut. Like,
Yeah.
that sums up so much. This is women saying this, and this is a women's seminar, and this is the first time they've been able to even have a platform, which is a good step, right? But
It is a super good step. Yeah.
They've shot themselves in the foot royally, because what they're saying is so hypocritical and very against what they're actually trying to accomplish. And
Do
they
you think their
don't
husbands
see that.
actually wrote the script for them, though?
Of course they did. And they told them what to wear with a look.
It was so rehearsed and so controlled and rehearsed, and there was specific stories in there, but the coercion throughout the entire seminar was just appalling.
And if you can't say something good, keep your mouth shut. Like, I mean, I'm sure all of us have had experiences where we've been honestly questioning something and maybe dared to say it out loud, and you just get shut down.
Yeah.
Like, you're not allowed to have a negative thought against anything.
In terms of normal world, it's probably not a terrible thing that on its own is you don't say something horrible. If you're not going to say something nice, social media, that sort of thing, we use that. We say if you're not going to say something nice, maybe just step away and don't say it at all. But in terms of what in terms of how they're using it, they're actually telling these people that you do not speak up if you have a problem with anything. That's the underlying message.
Yes,
is
exactly.
You can't speak up.
Don't contradict anything. That's
Yeah.
The cognitive dissonance that the females must have experienced with this, because they finally get to come and do a presentation. They get to have a voice. I mean, and they do this because we've been on them that the females have no say inside there. So they do this sister seminar, which I am super happy that every single one of these females got to feel what it feels like to be in a position of speaking up. The cognitive dissonance comes in when everything that they're saying is scripted for them. Everything that they're saying is not about giving them free will, giving them a free voice. Everything is very coerced and rehearsed. That's the sad part about it.
And they would have been carefully handpicked. They would have been carefully handpicked. The women that spoke would have been extremely carefully handpicked and would have been the ones that were going to spill the spiel that was prescribed for them. It wasn't, it's not just your everyday member who gets up and just gets to speak, organically.
When I saw the names, I knew that these were specially handpicked people. These were people who drink the tea. I'm sorry, they drink the Kool-Aid.
100%.
They're Brucey ass kissers. So they're gonna perfect recipe there.
And from very wealthy families as well.
Of course. Yeah.
So this segment analyzes the 2025 PBCC Women's Seminar, specifically focusing on a sister's fond recollection of meeting and being kissed by the former world leader, James Taylor Jr., JTJr, when she was a child. The seminar frames this experience as a spiritual blessing and a treasured memory. Outside of the PBCC high control environment, these stories reveal a dangerous culture of emotional conditioning, spiritualized hero worship, and the sanitization of historical abuse. Just to give you context to this, here's an eyewitness account of JT Jr.'s behaviour in the house at Aberdeen. We arrived at James Gardner's house on Thursday evening. Mr. Taylor was in bed, resting, and joined us at 7 p.m. He very soon paid a great deal of attention to the sisters, spoke in a crude way of their having had relations with men, and constantly asked different ones when the results would be. When is the delivery? He made reference to bras and to take them off, and seemed obsessed with the sisters' breasts. He made one sister after another sit on his knee. With one especially, he kissed her for minutes at a time, putting his mouth over hers and sucking her in the most peculiar way, all the time fondling and caressing her body, making her husband look out the window while doing so.
Wow.
His tactics Oh, yeah, yuck. His tactics with other sisters he wanted was to say that they didn't like his ministry, were not with him, and so on, until they came to him. This went on till the Kerrs came, about 9 p.m. They should not have been there, but Jim insisted they stay, so that James Gardner and his wife had to sleep in the most difficult circumstances. When he had gone off to bed, we found the first sister he had handled was very upset. We found in the morning she was nearly hysterical through the night. That was our account from Ted Steedman, who was there at the time. So that was one of the witness statements.
Moving now on to our final subject, experiences with the great men. I think it's important for us younger ones to be drawing alongside older ones and actually asking them for their experiences. Joy and Ruth, you'd have many that you could share from over the years.
Yeah, definitely. I remember the first time I met JTJr, and my auntie Concy took me to speak to him at the Sydney International Airport, so the old one. And she took me by the arm. She said, "Come over and meet Father." And she said, "Father, this is Estelle's friend." And he said, "Oh, I'll give you a kiss for that." I never have forgotten it and loved him.
Yeah, and how old did you?
I was 12. Actually.
Yeah, well, I can remember a similar experience when I just turned 6 and JTJr came out to Kellyville. It was March 69. I think it was on a Tuesday night, and I expressed a burning desire to meet him. So my grandfather Harold said he'd take me to speak to him. So after the meeting, we looked for him. We couldn't find him inside the hall, so we went outside and found him walking up and down the road out the front in the dark, all by himself. So my grandfather took me up and said, "My little granddaughter wants to meet you, Mr. Taylor." And he shook my hand, which was an unforgettable experience. I didn't get the kiss. But it's just so essential to get our own link with the testimony, isn't it?
Inside the PBCC, this interaction, an adult, let's just be clear here, this is an adult male leader kissing a 12-year-old girl, is presented by the woman as a treasured spiritual moment and proof of affection. I mean, she wouldn't have known him from a bar of soap, other than the revered messages that come down through, all the members, that he's this... It's the first time she's ever laid eyes on this person. So it's not like she's an acquaintance of his, or even her parents are acquainted with him. This is just some godlike creature that she's been told about. So this is a critical example of the group's internal logic, behaviour that an external observer would immediately identify as a serious boundary violation with a minor. It is instead portrayed as a wholly memorable and validating experience. That's just horrendous. A second sister recounts her childhood self at age 6 having a burning desire to meet him. The application of such an intense adult phrase, burning desire, to a young girl's longing to meet the leader is highly revealing. It demonstrates a system of emotional conditioning that fosters spiritualized hero worship. I can attest to that. Like, we thought they were like gods. Like, when they were coming, I remember him being in Perth, and literally us little kids swanning around after the meeting, trying to get around to where he would walk out to the vehicle, because we wanted to get, close to it and see if we could speak to him. It was like a godlike figure. It wasn't, we didn't know him, but we just were so conditioned to understand this guy was some godlike figure that I can definitely relate to that. Children in high control groups are intentionally trained to feel this kind of overwhelming devotional attachment to the leader, effectively merging affection with obedience. This sets the stage for accepting inappropriate behaviour, as the desire for the leader's attention has been redefined as a spiritual quest. It's classic grooming dynamics. Another recollection involves being taken out at night to meet JTJr alone, escorted by an elder family member. This is framed as a special privilege and an honour. However, the scenario, isolation, adult facilitation, and a child being taught to feel honoured, fits classic grooming dynamics. The seminar's purpose is to present this as an uplifting memory, effectively training members to reinterpret potentially concerning situations as signs of spiritual favour. The reframing of harmful behaviour.
I wonder about that though, like that. I wonder if that all stemmed from the Aberdeen incident. Like they had to flip that somehow, didn't they? And turn the narrative so that, you know, it was regarded as special and holy and something to be desired with burning, obviously. You know, and this child who said that would have mirrored what she'd witnessed her parents say and heard other adults say at many breaks and such things, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I wonder if before Aberdeen that they would have ever spoken about this kind of unwarranted emotion, like a physical affection from a leader.
Well, yeah, you're absolutely right, because how else did the women that actually experienced that, most of them were probably left at that time, I'm not sure, but there would have been some, well, there was some that stayed loyal regardless of having actually experienced that extreme, like, violation of their being. Like, it was horrendous. So they would have been in total cognitive dissonance, and they would have had to somehow justify what he'd done,
because to speak against it would just be would be absolutely unheard of and not allowed, right? So they would have had to. So then that just it filters down. What is it from 1960? It's like we've got 60 years that the cult has been.
Because you can't dare say anything negative about it. You can't dare say that there was anything wrong or impure with the man. The man himself was purity. So you've got to somehow flip it in your head and make it holy in some way.
So for 60 years, that's been the narrative.
And that's a horrific culture to like, that just okays everything.
Yeah, and I'm trying to put myself in their shoes, right? Because I mean, back in the day, I was quite a Brucey follower, and I would, you know, absolutely long to talk to him, and I did many times, right?
Yeah.
And thought it was just so amazing and so special, and I just can't imagine if something like that had happened, what I would have done in that state of mind when I was so taken in by him. I mean, I wonder if you probably would have gone away and thought, okay, I didn't really love that, but I can't say anything about it. And then it would have had this psychological effect on you for a long time.
Could you imagine if in that seminar there was a psychologist or like someone who studies cults sitting in there and hearing these people talk about themselves in regards to JTJr at age 12 and age 6? I mean, it would have been stopped right there. Like, that was a massive red flag. And for anybody who hasn't watched Keep Sweet, Pray and Obey, it's a FLDS documentary. Like, when I listened to this, I felt physically ill to my stomach. And all I could think about was watching that documentary and being like, this is no different. Like, and for them to put this on a actual seminar out to 56,000 people, this is why the things that happen to young kids happen. It's why what would have happened, nobody would have even questioned me being at Ellen's house all the time. Like, this is the thing, this is why these things were acceptable.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that shocks me is there would have been children and young girls listening to this seminar. They would have been sitting there, and what it's telling them is, oh, if some old guy from, as long as he's brethren, never mind if you've ever seen him before, if he wants to take you round the corner and kiss you, that's fine. That's actually something good. I mean, that's what they're literally telling children.
Yeah, it's an honor.
It's one thing I'm really happy about being able to train my children about, like, being wise about these kinds of things, right? And in the Brethren, I remember even when I was quite happy in there and didn't want to leave, I was really stressed about how I would train them properly to protect themselves, because you can't shield them from everything in real life. Even in the Brethren, your kids go to the store, they go ride their bike, things unfortunately do happen.
Yeah.
You know, and every child deserves protecting, and I was so stressed of how to explain all these things to my kids properly and make them smart about protecting themselves. And now, unfortunately, I can train them better out of the Brethren than I could in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a reframing of harmful behaviour. The seminar explicitly reinforces this authoritarian emotional control with maxims like, just a look from these great men should be enough, and having the great men to your house is like having the Lord come to visit.
And it's just as often been said that having the great men to your house is like having the Lord come to visit.
This is the PBCC teaching women to reinterpret inappropriate contact as spiritual affection. The women recount these moments positively because the group conditioned them to believe unwanted or confusing contact equals care, leader attention equals divine approval, affection from a leader is always pure. This is textbook reframing of harmful behaviour, a survival response seen in many closed religious systems. They're sanitising the history, the legacy of the 1970 crisis. The seminar's glorification of those affectionate stories is not harmless nostalgia. It is a direct continuation of the PBC's effort to rewrite its own history. The system's culture of close physical contact and boundary blurring around women was central to the biggest crisis in PBCC history, the 1970 Aberdeen incident, where JTJr was found in bed with another married woman. Instead of confronting the roots of this crisis, the seminar elevates his legacy, presenting physical closeness as a blessing and reinforcing loyalty. This is generational manipulation. A child raised to believe a kiss or touch from him is beautiful and his approval is everything, becomes an adult who silences their instincts, excuses harmful behaviour and doubts their own reactions, priming them for ongoing manipulation. The unavoidable question: when adult women smile while remembering a leader kissing them as children, listeners are not hearing a simple faith story. They are hearing the long-term effects of a system that trains people to reinterpret deeply inappropriate moments as signs of spiritual favour. This panel unintentionally exposes the core truth. The PBCC never resolved the problems that exploded in 1970. They simply spiritualised them and passed them on. Why does a modern religious organisation still celebrate close personal stories about a leader whose questionable behaviour caused an entire church to split? I would say it's more than questionable behaviour there. I'd be stronger with that. I would have been very much stronger with that, but yeah. So I'd pose a couple of questions to the audience. What happens psychologically to a child raised to believe a grown man kissing them is a spiritual moment? How does a system that defines meditation as thinking only about the leader's writings affect a person's independent thought? What does the framing of these stories as holy rather than concerning tell us about the present culture of the PBCC?
Yeah. In panel 1, that was Joy Hutchinson, Ruth Baker, Sasha Melanson, and Karen McDonald. And so as we go on to part 2, this is Eloise Holder, Karen McDonald, Nolita LaFlave, and Tina Cowie. So panel 2 goes on to, it's about apps, habits, and watching yourself. Panel 2 steps things up with planners, apps, and growth hacks. Again, nothing wrong with tools on their own, but listen to how it all lands.
So time is the most precious resource that we have, whether we're wives, whether we're individuals or employees. We're always needing more. Unfortunately, we can't physically buy time, but I guess the question is, like, how can we make more time? Nolita, I know you've managed to buy back a little bit of time recently. How did you do that?
Yeah, I find really useful just tracking my time. There's lots of tools out there that you can use, like Clockify, and just when you analyse it, you can even just do it for a couple of weeks, doesn't have to be the whole time, but when you analyse it, you figure out what you are spending your time on, and then you can make sure you are focusing on what's most important.
I wish I could buy back some time.
Does your mum?
Yeah, between like, I don't know, alarms going off. I don't know how many alarms I have going off during the day on the phone, but running back from different schools, pickups and drop-offs and swimming lessons and grocery stores and trying to get the wash done in time and uniforms and all that kind of stuff.
I think you forgot dinner in there somewhere. But what about busy mums, Tina? How can they keep on learning and developing?
Yeah, I think doing things while you're earning or doing other boring tasks is probably a good chance to get something in, like to learn. Moral growth, probably. I've just reinstalled Living Words on my phone, and I find that really good to listen to. Gives you something to listen to if you've missed any reading during the day.
Helps sort of spice up the humdrum a little bit, doesn't it? If you've got something to do while you're doing the ironing and the washing, that's good.
They talk about weekly reset plans, calendars, and family huddles with your husband to align your schedules. On the face of it, that's just being organized. But when you put it in the PBCC context, you start to hear something else underneath. You're being encouraged to account for every minute of your day. No unstructured time, no genuine downtime that isn't dressed up as useful. Then we get the time tracking apps, Clockify, screen time trackers, habit sharing apps. One sister proudly says she tracks how she spends each hour and how often she checks her phone. Another mentions an app where someone else can see her habits and whether she's followed through. Again, these are presented as fun, motivating tools. But if you've lived in a high control group, you'll recognize the feeling. It's not just I'm tracking myself, it's I'm being watched even when no one physically is in the room. The watchdog has moved inside your own head. Mentorship is framed the same way. They talk about mentors as someone who checks your habits, someone who follows you up, someone who reads your goals, someone who makes sure you've stayed on track. That's not really a friend you can fall apart with. That's someone appointed to keep you lined up with the system. They even suggest choosing someone you aren't too emotionally close to, which basically guarantees they will prioritize standards over your actual feelings.
Yeah, it's interesting. So how would you describe a mentor?
I think it's just a friend or someone that will, follow you up, keep you accountable. There's someone that you're not too close with, but you're comfortable talking to, so that they'll be faithful to you, and they will just push you to keep moving forward.
And it doesn't have to be someone necessarily in your locality where you are. It could even be someone over the other side of the world that you can meet with on Zoom. It's like plenty of people out there, isn't it?
Exactly.
Then they go into these impression groups they have. Little chats where ministry quotes get fired through all day. So even while you're folding laundry or driving kids, you're being nudged back to PBCC doctrine. It's not just your schedule that's full. Your head is full too. And then there's the famous line about learning from every housewife you meet. Here's the audio to that.
And we were chatting the other day, you're saying just around like building moral habits, that you're part of this impressions group.
Yes, that's awesome. We just have a group of a few of us, and we'll just pop on impressions throughout the day. We try to do one a day, or and just pop in a ministry reference or something we've read, something that we found helpful that day. And we've also obviously been encouraged to try and read something of each of the great men, but I struggle to find the time for that personally, so just being able to see different snippets throughout the day is awesome.
It just makes that happen, doesn't it? If you don't get your 15 minutes in at the start of the day or half an hour at the end of the day, you've at least got those little snippets to read through. I know one of my auntie's favourite little tips about life is that take housewives, for example. They've all got different things, different ways of doing things. And if you were just to pick up one great tip for housework or one fantastic recipe from every housewife that you spoke to, imagine what a fantastic cook and a fantastic housewife you'd become.
On the surface, that sounds like sharing ideas. Underneath, it quietly reinforces that your core worth lies in how efficiently you run the home and how well you replicate what good women before you have done. And even in their private homes, women are being conditioned to think like managers in a corporation they didn't even choose to join. They mentioned that Campus & Co. is gone now. Here's an audio to listen to.
It's probably good to just sit down and think, like if I used to spend 10 hours a week there, what could I do with that time? What's something I could actually replace it with rather than it just sort of dissipating into the daily schedule? But what about you, Tina? You used to spend a bit of time there.
Yeah, so instead of that time just going to waste, now you don't go there one day a week or whatever it is, yeah, it's just good to try and put it back into. I myself trying to get back into doing more at OSG, like CCS or gym with the kids or whatever it is, and also things like trying to set myself to do a bit more entertaining and stuff with the extra time.
I think we could all probably do a bit more of that, but that's a great way to get it back, be working more in the ecosystem as well, isn't it?
Yeah, sure.
That was absolutely mind-blowing for me. Like, I could not believe it. Like, when Campus and Co came along, having worked there minimal compared to some other sisters, and then to say, oh no, what are we going to do with all this extra time? Let's not just waste it. Like, let's not actually just go sit down at home and have a cup of coffee and rest.
Yeah.
They just are made to feel so guilty if they're not constantly busy. It honestly just made my heart ache. It really did.
10 hours a day. Sad. If anyone was working there 10 hours a week, my goodness, imagine what they could do with that 10 hours in terms of for themselves. They could have a little side hobby. They could have their own little business going on. I mean, at a minimum wage, even if they were, while they were working at Campus & Co, I wonder if they realised that at a minimum wage in Australia, they would have been earning $250 minimum in their pocket for those 10 hours.
Yeah.
So if they're not working at Campus & Co anymore, imagine what they could do with those other 10 hours to actually do something for themselves. No.
No.
We have to repurpose you into serving the community, serving the ecosystem. Don't ever think for a minute that you might take that time back for yourself.
No, and that's why I didn't work there a lot, because I did value doing things for myself, even if, a lot of other people didn't agree with it or I didn't tell them about it, and I'd go past there and there would be sisters who had been sitting there and it was 3 p.m. They'd been sitting there since 8 in a cold warehouse waiting for the delivery.
And it was sad how they talk about, so I mean, you heard in the audio, how they say it's just, don't let it just dissipate into the daily schedule, those extra hours you had, right? Like, you guarantee with how busy these mums are, those extra 10 hours was it didn't just dissipate into the daily schedule. It probably went to something that they had been having to fall behind on because of the Campus & Co stuff,
Absolutely. And on another point too, like, I know I had this come up along with a lot of other young mums, and this sounds like a small problem, but for instance, my mother-in-law got so absorbed in the school, we would call it the school store, Campus & Co. She got so absorbed in it that the babysitting, I mean, every now and then I would ask her to babysit because I had a doctor's appointment or something. And, I can't because, can't you just change your appointment? I was like, no, actually my appointment's more important than, checking the best before date on the sour cream in the fridge. Like, and a lot of young mums were finding this, like,
mums weren't available to them anymore for the normal mum duty or, grandmother duties.
And as young mums, we were also pressured, and I would go there and put my 2-year-old in a cold shopping trolley, and she'd sit there and, get up to mischief in the trolley while I was trying to stock the shelves. It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'd got paid, sure, no problem, but not when you're doing it for free.
Yeah.
I'm really happy though that they don't have to go to that store anymore. I'm really happy for them, and I hope some of them wake up and realize, like, it's okay to just take some time for yourself now. Don't tell anyone, just do what you want to.
I wouldn't sit on our laurels too much though, because I have heard rumour that it's going to be going to online, so there will be some poor people that will be tasked with the back end of the administrative work, and they'll still be packing the orders in behind the scenes. It just won't be so public. It's just gone underground. It's just another case. It's just another case of them sending it underground so that it's not public facing, so that we can't see it to call it out, right?
I wish every single one of them would boycott it and every single one of them say no.
Yeah.
Panel 3 was Cassia Dalziel, Shanna Proctor, Nolita LaFlave, and Tina Cowie.
Panel 3, money, mortgages, and who you really work for. Panel 3 moves into money. Again, the language is very sensible on the surface. Budgets, saving, cutting back on takeaway, comparing power bills. But then you hear the slogans. What gets measured gets managed. Facts and data set you free. They're very keen on apps that hook straight into your bank account categorize every transaction and generate neat graphs of your spending. In a normal setting, that can be genuinely empowering. In a high control setting, it becomes another way to check whether you're living tight enough, cutting back enough, sacrificing enough, and whether your money is flowing into the right places. One sister looks over her last 6 months and realizes she spent $5,000 on bought food. The takeaway from that isn't, wow, maybe we're all exhausted and grabbing food because we're drowning. It's framed as a moral lesson in tightening up and redirecting money towards things that matter. Mortgages, church commitments, brethren businesses. There's that very telling bit of advice about gifts for young people.
Comes down to daily habits too, like we had on Strive.
Absolutely, we all have our little habits that we know what they are, and maybe our weak points. But maybe get to the end of the day and you've had a hectic day, and it's much easier to just go and buy tea rather than make dinner.
Yeah, exactly. We should all be thinking about setting money aside for Saturday as well. I remember a comment once was said to a young brother about someone buying him a birthday present, and they said it will just be cash, it won't be a boat hire because you can't make money on that. Yeah, it's all about making the right decisions.
So joy, experiences, fun memories with friends, these are quietly devalued. What's praised is anything that can either be saved or poured back into the group. The mortgage story is even more revealing. One woman remembers her dad meeting JSH after getting his first mortgage. The advice was,
yeah, and to be realistic, we all have a mortgage to pay off, which would be the priority. We don't have to keep up with the Joneses living in your means. Yeah, exactly, Tina, on the mortgage topic. Actually, I remember Dad saying that he bumped into JSH just after Dad had got his first mortgage approved on his first house, and JSH said to have it paid off in a sixth the time of the loan term, and so clearly that would be, you'd have to be paying a lot more off each month than what the bank suggests. He said to him to be as tight as possible on yourselves, but make sure you look after the brethren. So us kids are getting around in shoes like flippers for a few years there, but we eventually grew into them.
So you live in extreme frugality, your kids are wearing shoes they'll grow into, you say no to almost everything for yourself, but you must never say no to the brethren. At the same time, you're under pressure to keep up with the flash houses and luxury lifestyles of those at the very top. This is not normal financial wisdom. That's a theology of self-deprivation plus group generosity, all dressed up as faithfulness. They wrap up the panel with lines like, measure what matters and spend with purpose. And the real question is, who decided what matters? Whose purpose are we talking about? Because if what matters is always defined from the platform and purpose always points back to the PBCC network, your money stopped being truly yours a long time ago.
Yeah. In this section, like, it just screamed to me of them talking to the poor people at the bottom of the rung who are desperately trying to make ends meet and are starting to push back because they have no option, but they're only talking to those people because the people at the top have got so much money, they don't even need to worry about all of these things. No. They don't give a damn about it. So what's so insidious and disgusting is that they're telling the people that are struggling that you need to do more, you need to manage your money, you need to, budget, you need to do this, it's because they're the people that are pushing back on entertaining because they literally can't afford it. And they don't like the fact that they're pushing back on entertaining, so they've got to tell them how to manage their money. And they've got to, tell them they're not being good enough. They're not being tight enough. It's disgraceful. Absolutely.
They even go into electricity bills too. They go into the electricity bills and like how to, look at it every quarter or 6 months or something like that and make sure, is there a better deal you can get? Like they squeeze every aspect of their life out is how can you save money?
How about you at the top? How about you share some of the money that you've fleeced from the flock? How about you give it back? And these poor people will be able to live comfortably.
What about paying everyone for the hours they put into your failed campus and co-venture?
Mm-hmm.
That would be a good start, wouldn't it?
And being a true financial advisor means you help the person save money for themselves so that they have more money to live their lives comfortably, you know? I had an insider reach out to me this week saying, I don't know, it's anonymous, but she said, literally, we cannot afford to entertain. And we're starting to get like stress from people around us saying, why aren't you entertaining? She's like, we can't afford it,
Yeah.
And she described feeling trapped. And I thought, oh no, like, here we go again,
It's interesting. Interesting you say that, because I've also spoken to an insider this week who is also in that same position and terrified to push back on entertaining because of the backlash and the ostracization and the gossip mill that goes around, and they just put under so much pressure to entertain, but she physically doesn't feel up to it, but she doesn't have a choice.
Yeah.
Tell her to just pretend that they're doing a big construction project and make a big mess, like right inside the front door.
But if you've got, particularly if you've got teenage children, you also get enormous kind of peer pressure coming through your children, because they get targeted and teased if the parents aren't performing up to standard. And they get bullied at school. Oh, your mum doesn't come to church. Your mum isn't entertaining. And they'll get mocked, and it's really
and there's that there's that insidious way that they go about things as well. Instead of coming directly to the parent and asking them the question if they want to know something, they'll go to the children or the teenager and ask them the question and put the responsibility on the question on them. And it's so abusive. It's so abusive. Like, to draw the children into adult problems as well. It's just
the whole series of these panels was very much everything, all the issues that we've brought up and how they tried to address them. But the thing is when you're in a cult and a high demand religious group, when you go to prove that you're not what people are saying you are, you end up shooting yourself in the foot, which that's what we see over and over and over in here, right? Is this constant where they just fall into a pit because they don't know how the real world works, and the reality that they're presenting, they think is better. They think that this is how it's supposed to be. Meanwhile, they're really exposing how much of a cult they are.
Absolutely.
And I find it very alarming sometimes, some insiders, the questions they ask or the things that they're afraid of. And I totally understand. But you realize, like, right, this was me a couple years ago. I truly don't know how to make this work if I want to leave. I truly don't know what my daughter, who was in one school global at the time, how she's going to adjust. How am I going to get her out of the school? How are we going to do this? It is so terrifying.
Yeah.
I do remember being in that state of mind, but it's alarming how incredibly indoctrinated they all are.
Yeah.
So their keynote speaker was this Dr. Daria Long, which was very, very odd having this ER doctor come and present. And clearly she had no clue who she was presenting to. Obviously, I think she thought she was just presenting to a bunch of, females that were wanting to be empowered.
I'd love to look her up actually and just see where she actually hails from. But she probably got paid a pretty penny just to be a keynote speaker at a seminar. And to her, it was like, oh, great, it's a women's seminar, it's power and empowerment seminar, blah blah blah. And she's turned up there and she's talking to this big group of people. She has no context, she has no background. She really doesn't know who she's talking to, and that's evident throughout her entire speech because there's so many contradictions there. And she's talking a language they don't even speak to start with.
She was from the States. Yeah, they brought her in from the States.
They're happy to import a female emergency physician from outside the cult as an authority to use her expertise and her credibility to enrich their seminar. But if a PBCC girl today said, I want to be an ER doctor, the entire system would shut that down. No medical school, no law degree, no vet school, no firefighting, no policing, just UBT, PBCC-linked businesses, OSG, internal roles in the ecosystem, They'll take the fruit of other women's professional freedom, but they won't allow that freedom for their own. It's almost darkly hilarious that they brought in an ER doctor to teach these women how to stay calm in crazy busy mode, when the only reason their lives resemble an emergency room is because the cult and its business ecosystem keep them on permanent red alert. She's talking about triage, alarms, and chronic overload as if it's a glitch in modern life that can be fixed with batching emails and meal plans. But in their world, the chaos is by design. Endless meetings, UBT jobs, kids in OSG, hospitality, entertaining, moral habits, impression groups, mentoring. No wonder their nervous system feels like an ER bay. Instead of stepping back and asking why are these women so burnt out in the first place, the PBC solution is to fly in a doctor from the outside world to give them tools to tolerate it better. And the culture clash is unintentionally funny. She references Jurassic Park. I mean, most of them would never have likely watched it. Travel, sports, and baseball teams. They're not supposed to join in the outside teams. Instagram perfect homes and social media influencers. They're not meant to even be on Instagram at all. And then finishes by inviting them to follow her on Instagram. I'm not sure how are they going to do that. And check out her online check out her online courses. Yeah, I think she'll be sadly disappointed that the numbers won't come like she expected them to. She thinks she's talking to typical overwhelmed Western mums with full access to media, careers, and community options. Meanwhile, she's actually addressing a room full of women in a high-control sect that bans most of the very things she's describing. It's like watching two universes briefly overlap. A well-meaning ER doctor offering coping skills for a world of freedom and choice, delivered straight into a system that deliberately overloads women, restricts their choices, and then calls the resulting burnout moral growth and faithfulness.
Well, you know what it made me think of? It made me think of how they don't want the women to get jobs. They're so busy that the women actually think they're too busy to get jobs.
Yeah.
To look outside of the brethren and get jobs.
When you keep them that busy, right? It's you don't have time. You don't have time to think outside what is on your agenda, right?
Exactly.
And the crazy thing is, in panel 2, they were talking about women in the workforce. One of the panelists makes a superficially feminist statement: don't limit your potential just because you're a girl, but then immediately narrows the acceptable options to leadership, coaching, marketing, OSG, roles in the ecosystem. There's no mention of university, external careers, science, law, healthcare, the arts, public service, activism, higher education, and secular institutions. Their version of women can do anything means women can do anything inside their cult-approved business network. So to bring Dr. Daria on was completely hypocritical, as there's no way these women can truly find a career they love, like she has, in anything outside of their ecosystem. Here's the audio to that.
Yeah, what about growth for those starting out in the workforce? Alita, you would have something to say?
Yeah, there's so much to learn, and I think just be ready to learn from the ground up. There's just soak in all the knowledge you can, learn about the business, the processes, the markets, all the products, all that kind of thing. There's tons out there to learn.
And that's like the time in your life when you actually have almost probably the most time to learn, isn't it? Like seriously valuable years when it comes to learning and development, so make the most of them. And I think it's good to remember also for those that are just starting out, employers are looking for 3 things. I think it's good to remember, like for those that are just starting out in the workforce, like they want great work ethic, they want humble attitudes, and just a good hunger to learn.
Yes, yeah, and on the work ethic, just life doesn't hand you success. You have got to work for it, and that hard work and effort does always pay off.
Yeah, it reminds me of a quote one of these great men at a recent seminar. It said, "It finally comes down to you individually if you're going to make it. If we can tell you everything, give you the tools, and the training, but when it comes down to the nitty gritty, that's you. We can't stand in your shoes.
Just important to remember not to limit your potential just because you're a girl. There is so much out there, and don't assume you'll only ever have traditional roles.
So many options, isn't it?
Exactly. You can explore leadership, marketing, coaching, anything like that. Just think big and explore the different options out there.
Do you think that really comes back to understanding our strengths and knowing that we all have gifts? We often have it said about there's no non-entities in Christianity. It's just about, discovering what those gifts are and learning what they are and then learning to play to them.
Making sure we're putting them to the best use we can.
Yeah, and how do we figure out our strengths? It's the best way.
Oh, one way that can help is there's a lot of personality reports out there, like Clifton Strengths. Crystal knows there's a free one called 16 Personalities, and that report just basically, you've got these strengths, it just puts them into a bit of a language that you can digest and work through.
It's good that 16 personalities gives you strengths. Well, I think they all do, but strengths and weaknesses, and even ideas for, where you're best fitted in the work world, all sorts of different things. Yeah.
So for them to be saying they don't have to accept traditional roles and girls can have anything they want, it's an outright lie. But because they don't know what options in other careers look like, this seems like big possibilities to them. Yet it really isn't at all. This again is another huge hole they dig for themselves, trying to be normal. Okay, so in panel 4, it was presented by Alexis Mitchell, Amber Brothers, Louise Anderson, which is John Anderson's wife, and Shanna Proctor. And it was, this was their health and wellness panel.
Panel 4, Misery Loves Company, but only certain company. The health and wellness panel is a masterclass in mixed messages. Say the right modern things. It's okay not to be okay. If you're stressed or overwhelmed, it's always beneficial to reach out for help. And then, almost in the same breath, they start warning. Misery loves company. Be very careful about unhelpful group chats. You might say something to someone you wouldn't normally confide in. So you're told, don't struggle alone, but also don't open up too widely. Don't talk in groups. Don't share anything that might escape the approved circle. In practice, that means no big networks of women comparing notes. No, hey, wait, is this happening to you too? Moments. No solidarity that might turn into collective pushback. The grief section is particularly brutal. One sister describes their son being taken, which means in their language as he died. And the very same day, COVID restrictions lifting, which meant they could start entertaining again. The example held up is that they threw themselves into hospitality for others, cooking, serving, and having people through their home. And that's presented as how they got through those first few months.
When our son was taken, it was the same day as the COVID regulations opened up for entertaining, and we found we were able to throw ourselves into the care of others, entertaining brethren, and it really helped us to focus on someone else, and it was so crucial for us getting through those first weeks and months.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think in any aspect, focusing on someone besides ourselves is really critical. I think we often get so wrapped up in our own challenges and our own problems. I mean, we often find that self is at the core of our depression.
Yeah, that's good.
There's no room in that story for collapsing or withdrawing or saying, I can't cope. The grief is immediately channeled back into productivity. And this is a young couple who lost their baby. I remember it happening right before we left. It was absolutely heart-wrenching. And then we get the line. We often find that self is at the core of our depression. It's only 8 words, but it wipes out a lot. It quietly erases trauma, abuse, chronic stress, postpartum issues, nervous system overload, medical conditions, isolation, everything. If you're depressed, the real problem, according to this logic, is that you're too focused on yourself. So the solution is to serve harder and shut up quicker. No wonder so many women there have this look in their eyes like they're running on fumes. There's also a story of a sister being told by John Hales to take her medication. But remember that the spirit is more real than that tree.
And then obviously you can talk to someone, you can go for a walk, listen to living words. It's all ways to kind of help us.
Yeah, exactly. And linking back to Strive, as we had, it's okay not to be okay, isn't it? And if you see someone else feeling a bit down, we'll tap them on the shoulder and ask them, are you okay? Yeah, that's good. If you're feeling stressed or down or overwhelmed yourself, it's
always beneficial to reach out for help. Yeah, I think that's good. And I think on that, about reaching out for help, we all know the quote, misery loves company. And so I think we just need to be very aware and very careful about unhelpful or unnecessary group chats. I think they can end up being more unhelpful than helpful, especially when there might be a bunch of people that you actually don't know and you end up saying something that you might not realize to someone that you actually wouldn't normally confide in.
Yeah, exactly right. We don't need to be talking to 10 or 15 people and gossiping about it, do we? It's someone we can find, a trusted advisor, someone that we do have faith in, we can talk to them about it.
Yeah, that's good. It's been said every locality has every resource. There's no stigma in going to a professional for medical advice. In relation to our minds, John and I once took a sister to see Mr. John Howes, and he went over how the devil can attack us through our minds. He spoke very calmly to her, but he said, take your medication, it is a provision. Also, he said, you've got to rely on the spirit. He pointed to a tree outside and he said, the spirit is more real than that tree out there.
So medication becomes something you use to keep functioning in the same environment that is breaking you, not a stepping stone to change anything about that environment. I remember it being told that half the brethren are on antidepressants and the other half should be.
Yeah.
I mean, isn't that enough to tell you that your system isn't really working?
Well, I think I told a story in my podcast of the local doctor that was looking for a church to join, and she decided the Brethren couldn't possibly be a good church because she was treating almost 99% of the members for depression.
No, it's a good thing she didn't join.
Well, that's a good testimony, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's a
very
great
good
testimony.
So by the end of panel 4, you're left with this awful loop. You're told to speak up, but not too loudly. You're told your feelings matter, but only if they can be translated into more service. You're told to reach out, but only to people who will steer you back into line. And I have a little personal story to add to this, which is why I wanted to read this part out, because I was somebody who struggled with depression for years in there. I was on antidepressants for probably a year and a half, which Bruce Hells told me to get on. So there you go. That's red flag number 1. Then after having my second daughter, I decided I didn't want to go back on them. I thought I would try to cope without them. And I did manage. And then my depression started again, and I didn't take any medication, but I realized that what I needed to do is get out of the Brethren.
Yeah.
And so I want to explain to all those sisters who were at this seminar, and I hope some of them are listening, that depression happened because I never ever took any time for me. And this line, we often find that self is at the core of our depression. It's there because you don't take any time for yourself, and your body is crying out for it, and your system is shutting down. Your mind is shutting down. Your body is shutting down. Your body is betraying the way you feel because you won't let your mind think that. And it's a really deep and near dear thing to me, that this is just so awful that I think of all my sisters and my mom and my nieces and my great nieces listening to that. It's an absolute lie. It's a fucking lie.
Yeah. You think about what they tell you when you get on a plane, and they talk about the safety procedure if there was a situation in the air where the mask drops out of the ceiling. They tell you that you need to put your own mask on first. You need to take care of yourself first. There's a reason for that, because if you don't take care of yourself, you're not going to be any good to anybody. And this is what happens. You're
and
so
the only
busy.
Reason,
you're so busy serving everybody else that you're slowly dying inside. And that is where the depression comes from. Not from anything else. It's because you are not being able to, you're not being afforded the time to look after yourself.
When I tried to start talking about how I was struggling, I actually confided in a close friend. And I really just spilled my heart out in a way that you don't really do in the Brethren. And I thought maybe she would help me. And nothing was done. I mean, she said, oh, let me know. I'll be here for you. I'll do anything that you need for you. She knew that I was like literally in a life or death situation at that point, the way I was struggling. She has apologized to me since we left. She said she felt like it was her fault. It wasn't her fault. at all, but it proved to me even the person that you think that you can trust won't actually do anything. And I have this stigma in my mind where the brethren are standing there and their mouths are moving that they're going to help you, but their hands are tied behind their back.
Exactly.
And
That's exactly what I was going to say.
They won't actually do anything for you. And it really does make my blood boil, because
but they can't. They don't know what to do.
No. But I'm here now today on this panel because I had the courage to fight for myself and to leave the brethren. And if I had not put myself first, I don't know if I would be here today.
Yeah. And the most distressing part about this whole panel was the insidious way in which they told them to stop talking to each other, to keep their mouths shut, stop talking, stop telling each other their problems, and to just get on and serve and work harder. And that is just cult talk 101 to start with, but it's also to isolate them from each other. It's their most effective tool in their belt is to keep each member isolated from each other, because if you start talking to other members and you start trusting each other and you start getting together in numbers, you will have safety in numbers, and they do not want that. Their biggest tool is to keep you all mistrusting each other, and so you don't talk to each other for fear of being reported on, and that is their number one tool.
Yeah.
And how cruel to take that away from the women in the church when they're at home alone all day. They don't go to work. They go to campus and co. But everybody needs friends beyond their husband or their wife or their family. They need friends. You need
the
that
whole
sisterhood.
messaging. The whole messaging throughout this is you might say something to someone who you wouldn't normally confide in. Like, that's just putting the fear, like they're already so mistrusting of each other because somebody can turn on you in a dime and start reporting on you that, and then they're literally telling them, you be careful who you talk to. Oh, reach out for help, but you be careful what you say. And, it's terrible. For somebody who is struggling with mental health, the isolation alone has a huge impact on their mental health.
Yeah, I just don't want any woman that listened to that to believe that, because that's absolutely the biggest crock of shit I've ever heard in my life.
Oh, yeah.
So we go on to panel 5, and it was presented by Joy Hutchinson, Alexis Mitchell, Amber Brothers, Ruth Baker, and Sasha Melanson. Panel 5 was on family life. It's where the whole thing stops pretending. If the earlier panels felt a bit much, this one is full-blown spiritualized burnout. They start with a warm, Pinteresty idea. Treat each child like an only child. In theory, that sounds lovely. Then very quickly, we're back to children needing to be hungry, humble, and smart. Children curating their behavior according to who's watching them. So from a very young age, kids are being taught that someone is always watching and their worth rises and falls with their performance. There's talks of charts, marbles, reward system, apps, Life 360, everything becomes trackable. Childhood turns into a series of checkboxes. For mothers, it's even more intense. They proudly share tips like keep every room visitor ready, keep the children's room clean, and keep it that way. Never put something down, always put it away. Save your energy all week just so you can entertain on Lord's Day. One woman admits she writes down tasks she's already completed just so she can tick them off. That's not a cute quirk. That's what happens when your entire sense of worth is measured in visible output. And woven through all of this again is that line. We often find that self is at the core of our depression. So if you're crumbling under the load, that's not because the load is ridiculous. That's because you're apparently too self-centered. Hospitality is then raised to almost sacramental status. Nothing could be finer in our responsible histories than entertaining the Lord's people.
So why don't the brethren want to entertain anymore? If you look back on the PBCC from the 1970s through to the early 2000s, and I'm old enough to remember that, the attitudes around money were almost unrecognizable compared to today. Back then, the whole idea was to live simply, with genuine unworldliness. Wealthier families kept things low-key, so that when everyone rotated through each other's houses for Sunday dinner, which happened every single week, Nobody felt embarrassed because their house wasn't a freshly staged display home. No one was pulling out $300 bottles of whiskey or comparing who had the most expensive leather three-piece suite. Where I grew up, the interchange was a rural village where many of the brethren were retired farm labourers. Some of them couldn't even afford telephones. Their cars were models from the 1960s, and this was in the late 80s. Sunday dinner was chicken or ham, which were the cheapest meats in the UK at that time. The food was delicious, but very, very simple. Just meat, potatoes, vegetables. The drinks were lemonade in plastic cups for the kids, and if alcohol was served, it was supermarket-own brand. No one, rich or poor, was serving wine with Lord's Day dinner. The extreme peer pressure to create an ostentatious display of wealth and designer brands simply didn't exist. In fact, it was the reverse. A peer pressure to conceal your wealth if you were lucky enough to have it. In church, Bible verses condemning the rich were on a near constant loop. You couldn't get through the week without hearing about the camel and the needle's eye. Remember these verses. You cannot serve God and mammon. Lay not up for yourselves treasures on earth. But those who desire to be rich fall into temptation and a snare, for the love of money is the root of all evils. And blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of the heaven. The message was very clear. Materialism was worldly, immoral, and a slippery slope to hell. And to their credit, it actually created equality. This was perhaps the one thing that the PBCC actually got right, their single redeeming feature. A poorer family could host a wealthier one without feeling that they needed to auction off a kidney to get the right roast. People weren't judged on their shoes, their furniture, or whether their car had been manufactured in this millennium. The focus was supposed to be on fellowship, not comparison, because apparently Christianity used to be about humility. Then Bruce Hales took over in the early 2000s, and by a slow but relentless process of frog boiling, social snobbery, greed, and ostentatious wealth, infected, corrupted, and eventually entirely took over this community of genuinely unworldly Christians. Remember the old hymn that we sang most weeks?
This world is a wilderness wide. I have nothing to see or to choose. Like no thought in the ways to abide. I have not to regret or to.
I wonder if it's still in the book. What began as a cultural drift turned into a full-blown prosperity gospel makeover. Wealth isn't just allowed now, it's sacred. And nothing illustrates this brave new spiritual philosophy better than a moment from October 2025 when the Australian Telegraph ran a major interview with Dean Hales, the son of PBCC leader Bruce Hales. Now, this wasn't a candid photo of Dean grabbing the mail in his yard shoes. This was a carefully staged, pre-planned media appearance meant to show the world the wholesome PBCC lifestyle. And how did Dean choose to present himself on behalf of this modest, humble, non-materialistic Christian community? By wearing Louis Vuitton LV driver moccasins, the brown monogram with orange ones, retailing for $3,285 Australian dollars, covered head to toe in giant LV logos, because nothing says we're just simple Christians quite like wearing the kind of shoes Jeffrey Epstein would wear to a Mar-a-Lago ball. And let's be honest, these weren't subtle. These shoes scream, "Look at me, I'm wealthy and extremely blessed, thank you very much." You don't accidentally wear Louis Vuitton monogram loafers. You choose them, you curate them, you build an entire outfit around making sure the camera captures those little orange accents in the laces and the soles. It's the spiritual symbolism of our time. The same group that once preached against worldliness now sends its leadership into the media wearing $3,000 luxury footwear as though this is all part of God's original plan. And because the PBCC culture is top down, this has become the new standard everyone else is expected to imitate. If the Hales family is wearing designer brands for a press interview, well, ordinary families better start working a whole lot harder, spiritually of course, to afford them too. Because in the PBCC of today, wealth isn't something you avoid, it's something you aspire to, celebrate and display as proof that God himself is basically your personal financial planner. All this is reinforced by a constant stream of not so subtle propaganda and buzzwords like personal prosperity plan, accelerating prosperity, maintaining our way of life, and that old guilt tripper, only the best is good enough for the brethren. The result is a full-blown caste system. Families who can afford the McMansions, the fancy cars, the designer clothes, and the luxury liquor are carried along comfortably on the wave of God's blessing. Meanwhile, families who can't keep up are left feeling inadequate, embarrassed, and inferior to the ones flashing LV logos at the Lord's Day table. All of this unfolds while those same families are being pushed to give more and more money to the church, pay inflated prices for UBT services, and support the school. It's a wonderful system as long as you're at the top of it. And of course, the emotional toll is enormous. People are burning out, sliding into depression, and relying more heavily on alcohol and antidepressants as a coping mechanism. One thing is very, very clear from the flood of messages we get from insiders and from the counter-thrust from the women's seminar. Brethren don't want to entertain anymore. They want to retreat to the safety of their own households and spend quality time with their immediate family. Why is this? Why has entertaining, which used to be the highlight of the Brethren calendar, become something to be feared and avoided? The answer is simple. The sisters are tired and angry at the constant peer pressure and judgment from the wealthy elite. Nothing is ever good enough. No effort or attainment can ever meet the Hales administration's standards, which are constantly revised upwards to ever more unaffordable heights. And who is to blame for this? The decent grassroots brethren families, the mothers and housewives struggling to pay off their mortgages? Or should we put the blame on the elite and the uber-wealthy brethren families, the Haleses, the Hazels and the Joyces? Do you think the wives of these elite families ever dirty their manicured hands with housework? Go around the McMansions of the PBCC elite on a weekday and you'll see the humble cars of immigrants parked at the curb as the housemaids come and go to do the washing, ironing, vacuuming, dishwashing, flower arranging and catering for the next weekend of entertaining. So when you look at that picture of Dean Hales standing in his $3,000 Louis Vuitton loafers, the spiritual giant with the orange plastic sole, he's not just wearing shoes, he's displaying the entire spiritual doctrine that the PBCC now runs on. Blessed are the filthy rich, for theirs is the kingdom of the heavens.
Oh, that was very well said, Richard. I actually want to read something from an insider that was sent to me on the Sisters Seminar. The Sisters Seminar, or should I say puppet show. Can someone please tell these people how a podcast or a seminar is run in a mainstream world? Yes, it'd be normal to have an agenda with bullet point notes, but when it's a whole script everyone is reading off with their eyes, and their eyes are constantly going up and down, it's very obvious none of this is from the heart, but rather you're in the midst of a brainwashing session that involves carefully selected parrots repeating key phrases until they're ringing in your ears even when you're asleep. Oh, the irony of telling people not to come under social pressures and then proceeding to reinforce the very things that are causing all the social pressures. We tell the public, yes, ladies can have a career, and then make their lives so busy they couldn't possibly maintain a career. Is that how you're going to deal with all the falsehoods and word salads that spew out of Lloyd Coleslaw's mouth? Take a look at who is sitting on your local front row. Do any of them just drive any ordinary car, live in an ordinary house, aren't wealthy, or have just been an employee all their life? No, because in this toxic community, your moral and spiritual state is judged upon the house you live in, the car you drive, the last name you wear, and most importantly, how wealthy you are, not your knowledge of the Bible as it should be. If Jesus comes back to earth in our lifetime, he won't be at UBT or Brucey's house congratulating him on all his scam millions he's accumulated, but rather more likely to be in Mount Druitt, yes, the hood of Sydney, sitting down, eating and drinking with the impoverished, the drug addicted, and the gang members trying to help them. No, he won't be dressed in RRT uniform either. And being the Pharisees that the brethren are, they will most likely deny it's Jesus. My point is, keep your eye on Jesus only. Never let a man come between you and Jesus and tell you he's your only route to heaven. The Bible tells us many times that it's through faith alone you are saved, not good works. No, not through entertaining, attending meetings, buying all the UBT propaganda, volunteering for RRT, or gifting to the ecosystem. Statistically, there's 45,000 other churches and Christian groups in this world that all claim they are the one true chosen group, that they have special light, etc. In the Bible, the Jews are the only ones mentioned as being chosen ones. Truth is, it's another psychological tactic they're using on you to keep you in the brethren and make you bow to their ridiculous demands.
Wow.
And that is from a sister still inside the meeting.
So I downloaded, obviously, the transcript of that whole thing, the seminar, and I literally just put it into ChatGPT and asked one simple question. All I asked was, what signs of coercion are evident through this seminar? And it came back with, I can help you identify signs of coercion influence within the content of the seminar as presented in the transcript. So, summary, what signs of coercion are present. So, across the sessions, there are multiple indicators typical of high control or coercive environments, including, number 1, heavy emphasis on obedience, submission, and conformity. Speakers repeatedly stress absolute compliance with group norms, rejection of questioning, criticism, or alternative viewpoints, strict discipline of children to ensure conformity, deference to authority figures, these great men, as unquestionable sources of truth. These patterns are consistent with behavior control and thought control in coercive systems. Number 2, idealization of authority and dependency on these great men. Several sessions instruct women to seek guidance from the great men, model their thinking after past leaders, keep experiences with leaders as a kind of moral compass, and trust external authority above personal reasoning. This creates dependency, reducing critical thinking and increasing susceptibility to pressure. Number 3, restricting external influence, information control. The seminar encourages limited exposure to outside perspectives, suspicion of technology, media, and social interactions, using approved tools, specific apps, filters, platforms, reliance on internal systems for information, support, guidance. These patterns align with information control, where a group filters what members can see, hear, or weigh as legitimate. Number 4, normalization of constant self-monitoring and perfection pressure. Repeated messages appear such as, do better, try harder, be more disciplined. No excuses. Winners win. You should track your time, habits, and behavior constantly. When tied to moral or spiritual worth, this becomes a form of internalized coercion, where a person polices themselves to avoid guilt or fear of falling short. Number 5, pressure to prioritize the group above personal needs. Women are encouraged to serve the community even when overwhelmed, host, entertain, or take on extra duties regardless of personal bandwidth. frame all service as spiritual obligation and moral expectation. This can diminish autonomy and reinforce role-driven control, especially when refusal is culturally discouraged. Number 6, emotional manipulation through guilt and fear. Common themes include fear of failing your children spiritually, fear of disappointing leaders or the community, guilt if you don't have your home in order, guilt if you seek help outside of the approved channels, fear of being judged, not just following the right path. Coercive environments often use subtle fear. You might go astray, your children's souls are at risk, to enforce compliance. Number 7, de-emphasis on individual identity in favour of group identity. Messages include, you are what you repeatedly do, everyone should have the same habits, there are no non-entities in Christianity, implicitly, if you aren't contributing, you are failing, strong pressure to conform to community norms about parenting, housekeeping, marriage and work. This promotes identity control, a key component of coercive systems. Number 8, infantilization of adults, especially women. There are repeated instructions on how to think, how to feel, how to spend money, how to plan days, parent, choose mentors, entertain, manage stress. When members are treated as needing prescribed behaviour in every area of life, that can signify loss of autonomy. Number 9, over-regulation of family life and children. Direction is given regarding discipline methods, expectations for maturity, technology restrictions, required spiritual habits, how to speak in the home, encouragement to monitor children's behaviour constantly. This can create an environment where family boundaries are blurred with organisational control. Number 10, pressure to internalise group values as moral absolutes. Many ideas are presented not as suggestions, but as the correct, righteous, or godly way to live, leaving little room for personal interpretation, alternate parenting styles, diverse stages of life, mental health accommodations, individual autonomy. When spiritual framing is used, resistance can feel like moral failure. Overall, what does this reveal? Taken together, these dynamics show an environment where compliance is rewarded, deviation is discouraged, authority is idolised, personal needs are secondary, and the group's worldview dominates decision making. These are classic markers of coercive influence, even if delivered in a supportive or caring tone.
Yeah.
That is wild.
Yeah, that was really well. You know what? While we're sitting here recording, I got an email from an insider on the sisters seminar. Like literally came 20 minutes ago. I just saw it. I want to read this out. This is hard to write. My upbringing in the PBCC taught me that if I struggled or didn't measure up, it had to be my fault. Everyone else always seemed to cope. So if I couldn't, I assumed something was wrong with me. After any seminar, fellowship meeting, or motivational speech, that was always a jingering feeling. Even now, after years of relearning and rebuilding my sense of self, I still felt that familiar weight afterwards. I know the truths I've worked hard to claim. I am enough. My best is enough. And anything I do from genuine kindness is enough. I want to give the benefit of the doubt that this seminar was intended to encourage, but honestly, it didn't feel that way. It felt more like a push to do more, give more, and be more. The whole emphasis on getting involved in the ecosystem rings hollow when we all know you can't simply get a job with Orbit for love nor money. Well, maybe for money. I don't know all the women who spoke, but I knew enough to recognize that many of them don't represent the day-to-day reality of most sisters. They aren't the bricks and mortar. They're the cathedral ceilings and gargoyles. Hearing single sisters speak about the pressures on housewives felt disconnected. And while I love Joy and think she has been the most amazing example to us all, saying, try not to work yourself up into a stressful frenzy, just enjoy it, doesn't help the young mom who genuinely wants to entertain but knows her kids will be out of sorts for days afterwards. Who knows, she'll suddenly remember she forgot to dust the bathroom sill. Who feels that no matter what she serves, it won't look like the pages of Al Gusto or Half-Baked Harvest. And while we're on the topic of parenting pressures, it is never okay to tell a child they're naughty. Their behavior might be challenging, but they aren't the problem. Language like that only deepens the belief that a struggling mother is failing, when in reality she is carrying more than anyone sees. These things we are taught in the PBCC can actually be very damaging and cause long-lasting problems, generational even, both with the children and the parents. We've been told these things that one of the great men said, and then, if we can believe the PBCC podcast, their families weren't going by any of the rules. Sorry, I mean directions anyway. Another point that deeply concerned me was the message of never being idle and packing the day full. Many of us have lived that way before, and the first thing to break is our own health. Exhaustion isn't spirituality. Burnout isn't faithfulness. Encouraging sisters back into that mindset is dangerous. The TED Talk from Daria Long was fine in a general sense, but most of us already understand triage and try to practice it. Yet in reality, once visitors are invited and the fresh food is bought, the train can't be stopped. Even if the 2-year-old needs mom or the 8-year-old remembers an excursion, the table must still be set, the meringue made, the candles lit. The triage becomes impossible, and we walk away feeling like we failed, even when we haven't by any reasonable measure. And finally, it was troubling how little was said of the Lord Jesus. So much was centered on the assembly, the testimony, the ecosystem, and the great men. The heart of our faith wasn't given its rightful place. Whew. Okay, I can feel her emotion in this. Everyone I've spoken to came away feeling discouraged, dismayed, or frustrated. I think it's time to shift the message, to genuinely support the well-being of members and acknowledge the realities they live with. And if they can't happen, then perhaps it would be kinder to let people step back easily, freely, and with their families. Wow. Thank you to that anonymous sister that sent that in.
You know, that's the feeling I got after I read the transcript, Cheryl. I got that feeling. I was like, what is this summarized? If that was me attending that, it's this feeling like this dear person described. It's constantly being made to never feel good enough. No matter what they do, they never feel like they're good enough. And they're not allowed to even rest while they're ironing. They're supposed to be listening to ministry. That just breaks your heart. Honestly, that just
so sad.
Absolutely breaks your heart.
I want to step back a bit on something that we miss that was also said in the seminar regarding tech being as harmful as drugs and alcohol. And as you listen to this audio, let's remember the amount of drink driving incidents that happen inside the PBCC. When will this subject be brought up in a seminar like they are bringing up the use of tech and gaming? The drugs and alcohol issue are a way bigger issue and need to be discussed more than this gaming does.
I learned recently that the impact of screen time is just as bad as alcohol and drugs on an undeveloped brain. That's a very powerful statement. As mentioned on Strive, we could be setting a certain amount of tech-free family time as a habit. I think that was a really good takeaway.
That's good. Tech is a part of our everyday life. It's here to stay. Just be good to encourage them to watch something that's actually worthwhile.
Yep, or videos on the UBT platform. I believe you can use Duolingo to learn a new language.
If you zoom out and look at all 5 panels together, what really jumps out is the constant contradiction. The seminar is full of double messages that leave you stuck, no matter what you do. Reach out for help, but don't tell too many people. Be honest, but don't be negative. Don't compare yourself, but leave your lists out so everyone can see. Make your home relaxed, but keep it inspection ready at all times. No pressure. Take your mental health seriously, but remember, depression is really just self. That isn't guidance. That's what psychologists call a double bind. You're given 2 conflicting instructions at the same time and then blamed for whichever one you fail. It's exhausting, and it's very effective if your goal is to keep people spinning in place, second-guessing themselves, and never feeling quite safe enough to say, hang on, this is nuts.
Yeah, it's like coercion. The coercion often hides inside things that look helpful, spiritual, or well-intentioned. But the most important step for the insiders and the outsiders is learning to recognise the difference between the genuine support and the subtle control with all of those contradictions.
Just know for anyone inside who's seeing through it all, it doesn't matter what you do. If you're questioning things, you're going to feel bad. And that's unfortunately the way you've been conditioned, but you don't need to feel bad about questioning things. You are allowed, and that is your right.
Yeah. And the reason that it feels so bad is because your subconscious is screaming about these contradictions. Coercion isn't obvious. It works through slow layering of expectations like identity shaping, fear of consequences, and the blurring of personal boundaries. All of these things, your core is responding to those contradictions and screaming that something is wrong here. That's why it feels so bad. Something that was supposedly meant to be empowering has actually just devastated you, because all it's done is made you feel like if you can't measure up to these extremely high expectations that are only designed to control, then you're failing.
And what this system depends on is destroying everyone's sense of self-worth, which of course they start to do from an extremely young age. Because if a person has no sense of their own value or self-worth, then they will just keep running on the hamster wheel under the illusion that if they keep running, eventually they will reach some goal or destination.
Oh, absolutely. And what they need to understand is they're not weak or stupid. These coercive systems are designed to feel normal from the inside. They're designed that way. Learning to identify the unhealthy pressure is actually an act of courage, not rebellion. So that's what they need to be remembering. It's actually courageous to recognize it.
And being able to be courageous and break through and identify this is breaking through the misogyny in there, because their misogyny in there is so wrapped up in so many layers that here is the sisters presenting this, but the misogyny that it was wrapped in was just horrifying, absolutely horrifying.
Yeah. And they need to know that they're allowed to question it. Their instincts matter, and wanting clarity and autonomy doesn't make them unfaithful.
And don't feel ashamed of not complying with all this stuff. What you should feel ashamed of is allowing yourself to be pushed around.
Yeah.
Like, it's impossible. I mean, having just left it 2.5 years ago, this has really triggered a lot of memories for me. And it's really made me want to just say to all those sisters in there, like, what you're doing is practically impossible to survive in a healthy way. And like a hamster on a wheel runs, it's on a wheel, it doesn't know it's on a wheel, it doesn't think about getting off and running straight. So you have to try to get off and run straight.
So Andrew, like, coming off of, since you're you're the most recent one that's left that's on the panel here, and as a mom in there, like, what is the biggest takeaway that you've gotten since leaving there and been able to have some of that freedom for yourself? Because that is one of the things that you've really carved out for yourself, is you've learned how to make sure that you have that time. So, like, can you explain to those still inside there the difference of your mental health from being under the pressure in there to what you have now?
Well, just having read the transcript and not having sat through that, it made my body, even now, my whole body is tense and my head hurts, because I can just, I feel like I'm back in that environment and that panicked stress where you're never good enough. And yet you have your good moments, you have to, you're a human, you have to try to survive and enjoy your environment at some point. But now I'm not on a hamster wheel. I'm on my own path. And yes, life gets tough. No one's saying that when you lead the brethren or you have time to take care of yourself, that life's not tough sometimes. That's unrealistic. But I have the beauty of choosing to do what I do every day, whether it be a lot or a little. I'm able to prioritize myself, which in turn makes me a good mother. It makes me a better wife. It makes me a happier human. In there, the women are living for other people. They're living to serve. They're not living for you.
Mm-hmm.
Also, when you're born into a system like that, you're raised in a fear-based system where you actually don't even know, but you're in fight or flight mode all the time.
Yes, yeah,
correct.
And you get so accustomed to living in that fight or flight that this pressure feels normal, and this, like, them piling on the pressure, you don't know how else to feel. So that feels quite normal to them. But you, having left only recently, Andrea, it's only 2 years for you. You would still be actually trying to learn how to come out of that fight or flight. So any little thing will put you straight back into that thing, because you're conditioned to live like that. And that's why it takes a lot of work to actually learn to live outside of fight or flight.
Yeah, and I would actually go as far to say I think I was living in fawn or freeze.
Yes.
Yeah. I was talking about these with Cheryl because, you don't think to fight back. You fight back in your head sometimes, and you're very angry about something, but you don't tell anyone, and you just shut up and do it.
Yeah.
So,
fawning is a big thing that they use there. Like fawning, that is one of the biggest thing is,
fight part, you have that in the way that you have to force yourself to get up every morning, and you have to force yourself to carry on. I don't know if that's answered your question, Cheryl, but I would say the biggest takeaway for me is just you have to take the time to take care of yourself. That's why when they say self is what causes depression, it's a lie. Depression.
Yeah, exactly.
You get depression because you're not taking care of yourself.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that. I went to the Gabor Mate seminar when he came here to Perth, and my biggest takeaway was the crisis in women's health is the oppression they are under. Mm-hmm. So that is, if you're thinking about depression and that sort of thing, that is oppression, and this is what contributes to the really bad health crisis within the women.
Yeah. I'm going to him in the spring and I can't wait. Yeah.
Oh, he's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate all you guys joining us to discuss this, and Andrea for coming in and giving us your insight. And before we sign off here, I just want to share a video that was sent to me about 5 religious indoctrination tactics that harm children.
Here are the 5 religious indoctrination tactics that harm children and why they should be banned. I am the gentleman occultist, and this isn't about attacking faith. This is about protecting minds that haven't yet learned how to think for themselves. Because indoctrination isn't about belief, it is about programming, and it starts early. Number 1, fear conditioning. Teaching children that questioning doctrine leads to punishment in this life or the next creates chronic guilt, anxiety, and obedience through fear instead of understanding. Number 2, isolation from non-believers. When kids are taught that outsiders are dangerous or lost, it prevents them from developing empathy for others and gaining crucial critical thinking skills. That is not spiritual growth, that is social control. Number 3, suppression of curiosity. Curiosity is treated like rebellion, but the search for truth should be sacred. Any system that punishes questioning fears its own weakness. Number 4, shame around the body and identity. From purity culture to moral policing, children are often taught that their natural impulses are sinful. That kind of shame doesn't build morality, it builds trauma. And number 5, conditional love. The idea that love, acceptance, or salvation must be earned through obedience destroys self-worth. Every child deserves love that isn't conditional based on belief. When practiced freely, religion can inspire compassion and community. But when forced on children before they can choose, it becomes psychological colonization. So let them explore, let them question, because real faith, like real spirituality, can only be chosen, never imposed. Save the children.
So that's the sister seminar. On the flyer, it looks like empowerment, mental health, motivation, and community support. Underneath, it's carefully crafted set of messages designed to keep women busy, anxious, and grateful for the chance to work themselves into the ground. If you've lived this stuff, you know the women on those panels aren't villains. They're not showing off. They're doing their best to survive inside a system that will not let up. They're trying to find meaning and victory in situations that most healthy communities would call unsustainable. Every chore, every habit, every little tip about lists and timers and hungry, humble, smart kids, it's all being used to hold together in an environment that runs on women's unpaid labor and silence. And if you are a PBCC sister listening quietly somewhere, maybe on a walk, maybe in the car, maybe while you're doing yet another round of dishes, I want to say this directly to you. It's not supposed to feel like this. You are not lazy. You are not self at the core of your depression. You are a human being who has been carrying far too much for far too long in a system that calls your exhaustion faithfulness. You are not being paid to be an ER doctor. You were told you were in a mainstream Christian church that would support your walk with God. Instead, the church has morphed into a high control group that treats your body, your time, your emotions, and your home as fuel. There is a way out. There are people on the outside who understand exactly why you're so tired and why this feels impossible. We're here because we've lived it, and we don't want you to stay trapped in it. Until next time, everyone, much love to you all. How can you support Get a Life podcast? You can donate internationally via PayPal at www.paypal.me/getalifepodcast. Or you can scan the QR code on your screen that takes you to our GoFundMe. Every donation helps keep this project alive. If you are in a high-demand religious group and need help, please go to oliveleaf.network. To share your story or be a guest on the show, email info.getalife@proton.me. You can find all our Get a Life merchandise on our website at www.getalife.net. Please remember to like this video, subscribe to Get a Life, and comment.